I'm Jennifer Archuleta, the host of Unfiltered, where the truth hurts, but it also heals. This is a space for anyone willing to get honest with themselves, because in the end, it's you versus you.
Usually she's asking the questions, but today we're turning the tables. I'm Adam Archuleta, and this is Unfiltered with Jen Archuleta. Today I get to sit down with my wife, Jen. You might know her from magazines, television, and music videos, but there's a lot more to her story. She's an author, has a film in the works based on her life, the founder of the nonprofit The Forever Angels, mom of 3, and the voice behind this podcast. Someone who has turned her life into something that helps others. Today, we're talking about all of it. Okay, so here we are on the Unfiltered podcast with my beautiful wife, Jennifer Archuleta, and you are typically the interviewer, and so now this time you're the interviewee. You asked me to ask you some questions and get to know you a little bit. So I think my first question is, how does it feel to be having done several episodes of your own podcast, but now being the guest of honor on your own show?
Well, I'm excited, and I'm excited that you're interviewing me because this all started off with you as my first guest. And I think it's bittersweet that you're interviewing me, and this is my last episode of this season. And we'll see where it goes from here. And you and I both know that, I had this vision that kept haunting me for years of doing a podcast. I tried to do it with several friends, and it was always like tomorrow, and it never worked out. And, when I have a vision, I have to act on it. I think if I was in biblical times, I'd probably be a prophet with all these visions I get all the time. And I had to act on it. And I know you're a perfectionist. Everything you do, you like to research it. You like to make sure everything is perfect. And I had this little flower background from Etsy and this sign that lights up sometimes and doesn't, and a mic. And, we can always say tomorrow. And you kept telling me, Jen, you got to get it right. You don't even watch podcasts. You don't even listen to them. How are you going to do this? And I just said, I am. And I feel like you just got to start with what you have. And that's what I did. And I'm really proud of myself. And I'm really grateful and thankful for the people that showed up. There were people that showed up that I wouldn't expect. And there were people that reached out that I didn't expect. And I think I had some phenomenal, I know I had some phenomenal interviews. And all it was to touch one person each episode. And I at least got more than one, but I know at least each episode touched one person. And that was my mission and my vision. And it was a God vision, and I had to act on it. And I'm glad I didn't say tomorrow, because I was working on this for a couple years, just thinking about it, dreaming about it, and trying to figure it out. And one day I just said, it's going to happen.
I think that's awesome. And that is the difference between you and I. And I wish, well, I shouldn't say I wish, but certainly I love the fact that you just act. You don't always think things through, but you just act, and it usually works out for you at the end of the day. I've known you now for, we met over 20 years ago, right? And so I feel like I've known you pretty well, and I've gotten to know you and your transformation and your journey. And so here's the question that I know, a lot of people know you as the host of this podcast and Jennifer Archuleta and mom and all that stuff. But who are you when nobody is watching? What's your definition of who you are at this point in your journey?
Well, I mean, I think that everybody says, well, tomorrow's a new day and I could do better. I think minute to minute how I can be better. And I just try to live in the present. And I'm just going to compliment myself, because I really don't. I'm really hard on myself. But the one thing I will say is I'm a really, really good person. And I could cry saying this, but it's like, even when I'll see a mom that's bussing tables, and I'll say a silent prayer, because I know that her life is hard. And nobody knows that, but that's what I do. And that's who I am all day long. And so here we are. I'm starting off crying. And I never used to cry, but for some reason, I don't know, the last couple months, I've been a crier. It's probably because we have an 18-year-old on the way as of tomorrow. But yeah, I am just a genuinely good person that's a cheerleader for everybody.
So you were born in a small town of Ohio. You went to Los Angeles, you moved around, and you have lived a pretty incredible life, and you have an incredible story to tell, and this journey has been really kind of unbelievable to sit here and watch. When you look back, what do you think has changed your life the most? If there was one moment or maybe two moments.
Well, I think all of it changed my life and it made me who I am today. I believe that all the bad things and the good things happen for a reason, and you can turn your pain into purpose. We feel pain anyways. If you're going to feel it, you might as well turn it into something great or good. And so for me, I think all of this has brought me to where I am and made me who I am. I don't regret any of it. And you know, a lot of my hardships, some people would be like, how do you forgive that person? Or how do you get over that? And I do, because I've sat on many psychiatrist couches and we tried to talk about what was or who did what and why you feel this way and what happened and who cares. They say there's a saying that the review mirror is very small and the windshield is much bigger, and you got to constantly keep moving forward. And that's what I've done with my life, and I hope that everybody would do that, because I mean, almost turning 50, and you as well. Time has gone by so quick. I can't imagine these people that are just victims to other people. They're not in control anymore. Whatever they did to you, they did. Whatever happened, happened. And now it's in your control to turn that into something great.
So is there anything in your life that you have a lot of different bullet points and headlines? Is there anything that anybody on the outside has completely missed about your story, or that you feel like they need to know, or get it out there?
Well, I mean, I think everybody sees where you end up. And obviously, I ended up what I would call a fairy tale. I mean, I'm grateful and thankful for you. You know that. I mean, it's a Cinderella story. I can't believe that, we've been together as long as we have and healthy and happy. And my kids, of course, have changed me. And there's so many things that I think brought me to where I am. But I think people always see the end game and they look at you now and they're like, wow, she's got everything. But they don't know the pain that I felt and what it took for me to get here, what it took for you to put up with some of the things you put up with to possibly have the person you have today. Or maybe you're hoping that I am working minute to minute and I'll be that better person in the next 10 minutes. But the reality of it is I think that, when we met, I remember, again, like, I buy dogs and I started a podcast and I want to get my pilot license. Sometimes I just have a checklist and I wanted to check you off my list and say, I'm going to marry this guy because he's the one. And I'm just so in love and he's so handsome. And I remember your words to me, and maybe you do or you don't, but you said, we have to build a foundation. It's like a house, and we have to build from the ground up. And I did not want to hear that. I was already putting the roof on when I met you. But well, and you were too. So we're not going to make it sound like you like to make me sound like some stalker and people are going to get the wrong idea. But, you know, you really taught me that sometimes you have to take things slow, things that are worth it.
We've touched on it a little bit, but again, when I think about your story and your upcoming book, and the things that you're putting out there, you've gone through things that would have broken most people. I mean, a lot of things that would have just been catastrophic. How do you think, or why do you think that you had something inside you that refused to give in to that?
Well, I did a lot of things on purpose in my life. I didn't go to Akron, Ohio, or Cleveland. I moved across the country, not even to Florida. I moved to the West Coast. I wanted to make things hard on myself, because when you have outs, then sometimes you will take it. And I knew the further I moved, the harder it was to get back and all the things. And so I really put myself in a situation where I knew I had to make it and I knew I had to make it work. And so, with that being said, I just think that you have to think about the time when I was in Los Angeles. There were payphones. I had to get quarters. I had to have money. I didn't have a cell phone. You had to handwrite letters. And so nobody was coming to save me. So when things happened, I had to rely on what's next. And a lot of times I didn't have time to sit there and feel sorry for myself. I just had to, instead of feeling sorry for myself, I kept moving forward and I put it into action.
It's almost as if you just continue to put yourself in a survival situation where you had no choice. There was, really no backup plan or no plan B or nobody to save you. And so you had no choice, right? But to put it all on your shoulders and just find a way to keep moving forward. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, and I think, and I love my family. My family's great and they would have done anything for me. But their biggest thing, and I think it's every parent's big ticket, is we can get you home. We're not going to make your life in Los Angeles. We're not going to support you out there financially in Hollywood, but you can always come home. And that was not an option for me because then I would have failed. And so, yes, I did put a lot on my shoulders, and I think that's what made me strong and what made me just keep moving forward was the fact that I did make it hard on myself, and I knew that I was the only one that could save myself.
Why do you think at this point now, you mentioned it already turning, getting ready to turn 50 here in the next year or so. Why do you feel like now was the time for you to finally tell your story?
Well, I was very busy with little kids, and
With your to-do lists
yeah, and
or
your to-do list. But I mean, I live a very blessed life where you've given me the life of luxury where I could be a stay-at-home mom and really be present and be there for my kids and my family. And I never took that for granted. And of course, I have, things that I could do and ways I could make money, but I never had to. And so I always wanted to never take that for granted and really stay in that moment and that gift. And so now our kids are a little bit older, and I'm begging people sometimes to just sit on the couch next to me because everybody's got their own friends and their own things going on. And so
I
I
don't
think
have any friends. You still have me.
well, that's true. Yeah, but you travel a lot and you're pretty busy too.
Oh.
We're all very busy, and so you do start to lose your identity. And I didn't mind losing my identity through my kids because all I ever wanted to be was a mom. And so now, I get on airplanes and I was always a hot mess. I always hated flying. And so I'd sit next to somebody and was like, you want to hear my story? And they were usually really long flights to Europe or whatever. And I'd usually sit next to somebody who thought it was interesting. And everybody always said, you should write a book. And the things that kept happening in my life was the next chapter and the next chapter. And my book didn't really get good. I mean, the book got really good and a happy ending when I met you, but the book didn't really get good until probably like 20, well, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. No, maybe 20 years ago, we'll say.
I'd say we put
And
it right about 20 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so there was enough. And I did start working on it. And I started working on it with different people. And then it just kept going on the shelf, literally. And so, that's that tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow turns into 5 years, 10 years, and then you're looking at 20 years. And so I finally took that book off the shelf. And just like things have always worked in my life, I have an amazing life where either things go really wrong or they go really right. There's no gray. So the right people were put into my life where it created the start of the book. And then again, I like to put the cart or the cart before the horse. I almost said it
Yeah.
wrong. And
The roof before the foundation.
the roof before the foundation. And, you know, I said, nope, not going to do the book anymore. That'll come out after the movie. And you're like, Jen, you can't even do the movie yet. You don't even have the book out yet. And I said, watch me. And so I just decided to put this out there now because tomorrow's not guaranteed. And I think My story is no better than anybody else's. It's no, I'm sure everybody has a great story. And that's why I started this podcast, because my idea was to get people that already had a platform and then give um, unfiltered to the people that don't, that have the great stories that you hear in the grocery store or on the airplane or in a bar. And so my story is no better than anybody else's, but I did learn from my mistakes. I tried to not repeat them. And I have broken every stereotype. And I have become great. And I married a great man. And I have a great family. And I have a great life. And it could have been very, very different. And that's what makes my story great. It didn't have a terrible ending. And every chapter, you could see how it could end pretty badly for me. No gray, either very dark or very light.
So, your book, you decided to write the book, and the title is Beyond the Velvet Rope. And so, got to ask, how did you come up with the title, and what does it mean?
Well, when I lived in Los Angeles, I was very young. I was 18. I wasn't even old enough to get into a bar and drink. And
I'm sure they had let you in.
yeah, I'm sure. But that was the other funny thing about LA. It's such a lonely place. I didn't have any friends to go to the bar with. So a lot of times I would go places alone pretending, because I was so embarrassed that I didn't have friends and I didn't understand why I didn't have friends. I'd go places alone pretending like I was meeting somebody that stood me up. And LA was a very lonely place, and people already had their life and traffic and all the things. And I remember working at Fred Siegel's. It was a really amazing, a bunch of stores that all the celebrities went to. And I was wearing this shiny dress from 579 that I had bought in Ohio with patent leather boots. And I was spraying room spray on Heather Locklear at the time instead of perfume. And everybody was just so mortified. Like, who is this country girl in the shiny dress spraying room spray on Heather Locklear and
Wait,
asking everybody to
what's
be her
room
friend?
spray? Like deodorant spray?
So
Like
I
air
didn't
freshener?
understand a lot of I mean, I came from Ohio, Walgreens, where there's Maybelline and CoverGirl, and they had all this fancy makeup. And Heather Locklear was in there, and I was starstruck. And she looked at me and asked me to help her, and she wanted to look at some fragrances. And I worked at Sentiments and Fred Siegel's, and there you could make custom fragrances. And you could also make custom room sprays, which you hate, which is what you spray around your house, if things don't smell right. And instead of putting perfume on her, I sprayed her with room spray.
So why? What does the title mean?
So to me, the grass is always greener on the other side. No, it's probably not. And so when I was in LA, I think that I used to, drive down Beverly Hills and see the people outside walking their dogs. I'm like, what do these people do that nobody's working? And they're all at these fancy restaurants in the middle of the day, and I just can't believe it. And then I'd go drive down Sunset again, alone in my car at 18, not being able to get into clubs because I didn't know anybody and I didn't know where to go. And I'd see literally the velvet ropes, sky bar, red carpet, velvet ropes. And I'd be like, gosh, I wonder what it's like just to be on the other side of that. And I was on the other side. And I'm telling you, it's no different. And if anything, it's worse. And your expectations, I'm very underwhelmed these days. You can't impress me with your car, you can't impress me with your purse, you can't impress me with anything. I mean, there's been beaches I've been to, and I don't want to sound like I'm jaded, but I think I've become very underwhelmed certain parts of my life because I've done and I've seen so much. And I hate to say that. The things that bring me joy and excitement are the little things that probably people take for granted. The hugs from your kids, or the whisper in your ear from your husband that you look beautiful. But I guess beyond the velvet ropes to me means I got there and I wasn't missing anything. And I found myself after seeing the other side. That was the only great thing about the velvet ropes, is I was like, who do I want to be? Who they want me to be, or who I am? And I had to constantly fight for who I was. Beyond the velvet ropes to me is just like, everybody always thinks, oh, when I marry that perfect husband, or when I have kids, or when I get the job, or when I get the car, or when I lose 10 pounds, my life is going to get better. Your life will always stay the same. you have to change who you are inside. And I constantly did that. I did that with my breast surgery. I'm like, oh, as soon as I get a boob job, I'm going to be so happy. Everything's going to be perfect and everything's going to be great. Well, got a boob job. I was in a lot of pain. For a while, I looked pretty crazy. And guess what? Nothing changed. Nothing changed.
I disagree with you because my life is going to get better when I lose 10 pounds. I know it is. And I need
Well,
to
you
lose
might
that 10
feel
pounds.
better, but
It will be different, Jen.
bad things are
I'm
still going
telling
to
you.
happen, is
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Again, it's like almost every chapter in your book is kind of jaw dropping in a way when you think about the experiences and the things and the hardships that you had to go through. And I don't think people really understand or have any idea when you open up like that, and you have to kind of go through that again in your mind. Was there a particular part of it that was especially difficult for you to write and put on paper?
Well, you know this because I mean, I don't think you ever saw me in work mode, but I think I had to tackle this. I kind of gave myself a deadline, which I should, because 20 years was a pretty crazy deadline. And I mean, you could probably tell that I spent what, maybe 15, 20 hours a day working on it for a couple weeks, right?
It was a long time. Yeah, you definitely. I think it was more than a couple weeks, but I mean, you really. It was a process, and I could tell. Well, it wasn't hard to tell, but I know it was an emotional event for you in almost reliving this. And I know it did actually take a big toll on you watching you go through this process. So I was certainly there to experience that.
Well, I think like I didn't realize, but a lot of people throughout the years, and we're talking 20 years of writing this book, a lot of people gave interviews to other people that were trying to help write it at the time. And so I forgot a lot of stuff. And that's the beauty of trauma is it helps you forget the bad things. And unfortunately, always it helps you forget the good things too. And that's where I'm struggling mentally right now is I don't remember a lot of the good things or the bad things. And that brings me to where I am today, where I'm very insecure and I have social anxiety because I go into places and I want to say hi to people and I adore people. And it's not that they don't mean anything to me, but I will forget names and faces because this fear takes over me. And I think it's the trauma. Again, I'm not going to go lie down and pay hundreds of dollars for somebody to help me revisit my past. I already did that through my book. But I have to say that trauma has played some part in my memory loss. I mean, the book was hard to relive. Yes. Were there moments in it? Yeah, I I think too with my trauma, and I'm not saying, and I'm not gonna give anybody advice, but what's worked for me is I tell my story like it's not my own. So I've always done that, where I will tell you what's happened and I laugh about it, and that's usually a defense mechanism that people use when they laugh about serious stuff. And I tell my story like it's not my own, and therefore it's not. And so it's always been very therapeutic, and it wasn't a big deal. But when I would actually talk to people that read it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this happened," and you just kind of like brush it off. I kind of was like, "Am I crazy, or am I going crazy?" But there's a lot of coping in that, and it's worked for me. I'm not recommending it for people, but it's worked for me to tell my story like it's not my own. And the reason for my story is to help people and say she did that, she could overcome that, especially with abused women. A lot of women just repeat. They will go back to abusers. I know that sometimes it's hard to get out. It was hard for me to get out, but then they'll find somebody else because they have low self esteem and things like that. You have to try to break cycles. You have to make yourself better. You have to um, just heal yourself and just. I guess my biggest thing is I try not to repeat the bad in my life. I try to overcome it and never visit it again.
Is there a part about your past or your story that kind of surprises you when you kind of reread it and you go through it, like that really stands out?
I was just so tough and so hard to be around. And I can't believe, and I'm grateful and thankful for the people that were a part of my life that were there through the bad times, were there through the good times, that put up with me because I was a really, and I'm probably still a hard person. And you could probably say yes or no. I'm sure you'll say no because you're interviewing me and I have to see you in a couple hours. I I just was a really hard person to be around my family, around people. I think reading my book and hearing my childhood stories, I was angry at the world. I was really looking for a fight all the time. I was looking for problems. I was very negative. And when you're negative, you will find you'll find the bad. You'll find the negativity. You'll find the fights. I would constantly be waiting for somebody to look at me the wrong way, just so I could let them have it. Just because I didn't like my life. They didn't deserve it, but that's just where I was. And that was my mentality. And I was a really mean person.
That's amazing to me because, ever since the day I met you, and I'm not just saying this because you're my wife and, we're madly in love and all that stuff, but that's not how people would describe you. People would describe you as super engaging, super thoughtful, super friendly, an ability to connect with all different walks of life of people. I mean, your collection of friends and acquaintances is rather massive. And so for you to describe yourself in that way, that's not how people have perceived you and that's not their experience when they meet you. So where do you think the disconnect is?
I looked in the mirror one day and I didn't like who I was. And people saw my weaknesses and they took advantage of it. And I just, again, you just have to look at yourself and you got to get tired of who you see. I can get tired of how somebody's acting. I could get tired of their habits. I could get tired of the things they do or they don't do. But nothing's going to work until they get tired of looking at that man in the mirror and they confront that person and say, "I've had enough. You're better than this. Do better." And that was me. I was like, I wanted positivity. I was tired of all of the bad stuff happening. And I did create that in my life. And people, we tell our kids this all the time: be careful what you think, be careful what you say, because it becomes true. Everything in my life has become true, good or bad, including thinking I was going to crash in an airplane. I manifested that every time I got on a plane it was going to crash. Now I say crash, but emergency landing, almost didn't land, so it was a near crash, so don't correct me. But I think in life we create everything. And
I agree with that.
down to meeting you, I knew your eye color, your hair color, before I met you. I knew how many kids I was going to have. I know I'm going to win the lottery. I know that hasn't happened yet, but I know everybody watching this, one day you're going to see me with holding up that sign.
I mean, that would be amazing, but I don't know if I would hold my breath on that. But
Good things happen, bad things happen, and I was tired of creating the bad in my life. And I was tired of attracting those people. And when I made that change, and it's a mental, it's just a quick switch in your head. If you're having a good day, you can have a bad day.
so in all the different, if I look at your life, it's you seem to have distinct chapters, and not just because you wrote a book, but there's definitely just so many key massive events that happened. Do you think any one of those in particular helped shape you the most? Is there anything significant that stands out that was extremely impactful on who you are today?
Well, I would say there's a chapter, and I'm not going to give it away yet, but you'll have to buy the book. But I basically I lose my mind for 2 years of my life. And I almost checked myself into hospitals, and I thought I was crazy. I thought I was hearing people talk. I couldn't be around people. I would sit and pretend like everything was okay, and then I would look for the great escape. Where's the exit? How can I get out of this? Can I tell them I have to leave? And I was going crazy in my own head, and there's a reason for that. And I overcame. And all I could explain is you could break your arm and you can get a cast and you can heal it. I felt like something broke in my head and I couldn't fix it. And that to me is the biggest accomplishment because we know life is all mental. Everything you did in football, everything that people achieve, it's all mental, it's all discipline. And to talk myself out of "you're not crazy" is one of the biggest accomplishments because I lost my mind, and I'm such a faith-based person. I probably would have took my own life because I felt so crazy, but I didn't because I didn't want to go to hell.
Is there ever a point, and I know I mean, you just kind of referenced it, and so maybe this was the point, or maybe there are other points that you felt out of control and that life literally was you were any moment away from things just falling apart.
I think there were many times, in my own relationship with the guy that abused me. I found out that we had bounties on our head. You know, I I was around him and people were after him. I could have just been, just with him, and unfortunately something happened to me. I think many times thought about just getting rid of me. And so I think so many times in my life I've been so close to basically standing on the bridge and either being pushed or jumping. And my faith and there being a bigger reason for me being here is why I'm still here. And again, I used to run from CCD classes. I'd tell my mom, I'm not going to CCD Bible study classes. I'm driving my own car. I'll just drive the other way. And I did. But somehow God was always present in my life to a point where he had his hand on my shoulder. I would push it away, but I knew it was still there.
So if you could go, travel back in time and have a conversation with yourself as a little girl who was, standing at the beginning of this craziness, what would you tell her?
I would say, thank God it was you. Thank God you were the one.
Why do you say that?
Because that little girl is still in me, and that little girl is the strong one.
I mean, that's pretty powerful.
I think we all have that little girl or little boy still inside us, and that's who makes us who we are. And I'm grateful that I was such a fighter.
So you've kind of mentioned it, just a few minutes ago, um, about God and faith, and God always having a part of your life, even though you didn't always reciprocate or you weren't always engaging. Um, why is that important? Why do you think that was important? And why do you think, despite all the valleys that you went through, that you continued to move closer towards God and really being a big part of your life?
Because I saw what not having God did with my life and what having God did do. And so I chose light over darkness. And I feel like there are pictures I could show you that you could see I was dead behind the eyes and I almost look like I'm soulless. And I was a version of myself that, like I said, was very ugly and mean and broken. And anytime I turned towards God, there was light.
You've kind of already touched on it a little bit, and just you kind of, well, not kind of, you do speak about your life of having gratitude towards everything that you went through. Um, Instead of wishing it didn't happen, you really kind of have that mentality. Um, do you see that there was a purpose? I mean, can you feel that there was a purpose, or do you care if there was a purpose, or are you just interested in who you are now?
No, I mean, like I said, everything that's happened to me has shaped who I am today and the woman I'm proud of. And so for me, I feel like God doesn't, you don't ask God for patience and then not wait in some lines in your life, And so for me, I feel like there were lessons I had to learn. And I feel like the lessons he gave me saved my life on many levels. I never touched drugs because I had a bad experience. And thank God for that, because who knows? I have addictive personality. So who knows what would happen? And so that seems like such a terrible, terrible thing. But in the end, it was a gift. And even, the guy that abused me and who was terrible and who went to jail and who now is dead, uh, rest in peace. Um, I would have never met you. And I might have not have been the woman that you needed or deserved at that time. So I wouldn't take back anything in my life. And it's all taught me some lessons. Some were harder, some were painful, some were sad. But I wouldn't take back any of them because they brought me to where I am. Even the timelines did. And so, all those years he abused me, the time I, you know, spent in that tormented relationship still brought me to you. And I wouldn't take any of that back.
Do you feel like this has been part of just your evolution, or did you feel like you have had to make a conscious effort to reinvent yourself?
I mean, I feel like people have stereotypes and people always stereotyped me. And, I was going to the Playboy Mansion during the day and church at night. I mean, I was living a double life. And so I've always been trying to reinvent myself, not for anybody else, but just to prove people wrong. I mean, I love when people tell me you can't or you won't or don't you do that. Throughout my life, I'm always like, you watch.
So what do you think that if there's like one thing that you've really consciously said, I've got to reinvent myself in this way, is there something specific you can share? Is it the Playboy thing?
I think that bothers me. I remember there was a time when there were women at a party looking me up and saying all kinds of things. And, um, that was a chapter of my life that it was such a fun, exciting, crazy chapter that when I was in that era, everybody wanted to be a Playboy Playmate. You're on private jets, you're at the best parties, you're around rock stars, athletes. There was so much.
You were behind the velvet ropes.
I was behind the velvet ropes, and the velvet ropes were a lot of fun, maybe too much fun sometimes. And you could get lost in the velvet ropes, but I didn't. And I think my biggest thing was I would always dress down. I'd always ugly myself up. I'd always wear baseball caps. And I didn't want people to see me like this, like, oh, look, like a lot of women, you're, I mean, I'm only gonna look this way for so long. And I don't even like the way I look anymore as it is. And I still cover myself up and I still, wear, like I'm still very conservative and careful and, trying not to embrace my beauty because people are like, oh, who does she think she is? Oh, she thinks she still got it. Or, oh, you know what she used to do. And I hate that. And I always hated that. But in the same token, I was always a tomboy growing up. I didn't know how to do my hair and makeup. And our little girl gets mad because I still don't, because I sat in makeup chairs and I had the best makeup artist doing my hair and makeup for every event. And speaking of that, it's pretty funny, but every time the paparazzi caught me, I didn't have my hair and makeup done that day. It was just like random where I had my wisdom teeth out, or I had laser done on my face, or I broke up with my boyfriend, or I gained 10 pounds because I was on a traveling, Playboy hiatus. So it's just interesting. It's not about me trying to invent myself. It's just me being real. And even this podcast, I started with Zoom and now I'm on Riverside. We've switched cameras. I've had bad equipment, good equipment. And I look at these and I cringe. And I'm like, ugh, I just hate to watch myself. And I used to love to watch myself back in the day. I'd be like, man, like, look at you on camera. You're so photogenic and all these things. And I hate it now. And it's funny because I remember taking some pictures with my friends and they weren't very flattering pictures. And we would be like, Adam, retake the picture, retake the picture. And you would say, that's the way you look, Jen. I don't know. That's just the way you look. And so I had to embrace that. And I started to tell myself, you know what? It's not about how I look. It's about how I feel and what I say. And it's not about everybody looking at me now at 50 being like, oh man, she's hot. It's about what did she give me? What did I get from that podcast? And trust me, the people are judging. I hate it. I know there's people that are like, oh, damn, she looks older or she doesn't look as good. No, I don't. I'm almost 50. And it's funny because on Instagram, especially when you're check marked, not when you buy the check mark, but when you're actually check marked, you can see when people send off your photos.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, maybe people aren't sending off your photos, but we can take a look at it.
Well, I don't really post, so.
No, but anytime I put a photo of myself, it is sent off 1,000 times. I don't know if people are critiquing it. I don't know what they're doing with it. It's just very strange. And so trying to reinvent yourself and living in the past, but the past is always, it's also brought me so much joy and greatness. And most people don't understand. I didn't choose my past. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to go to Hollywood and become a Playboy playmate. You know, this chose me and it saved my life. And people can say, and happy birthday, Hap. It's his birthday today in heaven, hopefully. Everybody can say what they want to say about Playboy, but it saved my life. I was either going to jail, I was going to be killed, or something really bad was going to happen. And Hugh Hefner was my guardian angel, and he saved my life. If it wasn't for the fame, if it wasn't for him backing me with the FBI and all the things, and we know that story, and that's in my book as well, I don't know where I would be. I certainly wouldn't be with you unless you wanted to be sending cakes with a file in it to some federal prison.
People are going to hear you say that it saved your life, and people are going to have a hard time wrapping their head around that. I know the why and why you say that, but how can you say that, and why do you say that? That Playboy experience that you're kind of trying to reinvent yourself from was completely necessary at that specific point in your life.
Well, that's why it's a battle I struggle with because, being Christian and trying to live a Christian life, a friend of mine who's an ex playmate and I talked about it, and she said, I can't do autographs anymore. I can't make appearances. I can't really, use Playboy as my platform anymore because her words were I was convicted to not do this anymore. And I felt that conviction as well. But I also feel like, and people are going to call me crazy, but somehow, some way, this came into my life. And I'm not going to say it was a godly thing because that might not sound right to people, but I know where I was and what was happening. And this was the thing that saved me. I needed a little bit of money, I needed a little bit of fame. And everybody I knew went to jail or they were dead. And I needed bodies, people around me. I would go to the grocery store and just talk to people because I didn't have anybody. And so Playboy saved my life mentally, physically, financially, and it protected me because I was somebody. And unfortunately, you can have all the money in the world, you can, have all the cars and all the fancy things, but having connections and having that little bit of fame, that saved me. And I was untouchable because they wanted to mess with me because they knew I didn't have anything to do with anything. They wanted to mess with me because they knew I was young. They wanted to mess with me because I was cute. Maybe they just wanted to knock on my door all hours of the day and talk to some young girl who was losing her mind. But that to me is that's why it saved me. That little bit of fame. Uh, they left me alone.
Well, I mean, that's again, I know the whys for a lot of for a lot of girls though, for a lot of young women, doing something like Playboy has the opposite effect. And so, not everybody has the experience that you had that was a necessary part of your life. So it's really kind of an interesting chapter on why that was there for you and what you got out of it and how not only in your mind, but I've seen it how it helped you springboard into really the woman you are today.
I mean, I never thought I was pretty. I still don't look in the mirror and say I'm pretty. It's really sad. Even being in a magazine, one of 12 and a centerfold, I still don't look at myself as iconic and all of that. But just like you can say in the NFL, people have their own experience. I mean, there are men that seem like they have it all and they commit suicide. How do you explain that? So the reality of it is my experience was my experience. It was a God given gift. Whatever people want to look at it, it was a business and it was so professional. I didn't even think about what I was doing. And you have to understand when you're in Hollywood and that's the norm, it becomes normal to you. Not until I had kids, not until I lived other places where I'm like, wait a second, that's kind of weird that I did that. That's kind of weird that, it's frozen in time and it's weird to me now, but I don't regret it.
But you really feel like because your life you were in, especially at that exact time, you were in an ultimate survival battle, and really in your mind your only way out was this exit. Is that an accurate thing? Because truly you were going through some major heavy stuff, and there was no other exit for you.
There was no other exit. Like I said, it was either, and I say this, and I'm okay to say this. I don't care. I'm 50 years old. People are going to find out at some point. Either I would have wound up dead or in jail. Period. And it was like somebody handing you a key and saying, "Hey, do you want to get out alive or do you want to try?" And Hef handed me the key, and I took it. I was desperate. I had no other options. I couldn't even go home because there were people after me that would have known where I lived and they would have came to my hometown. I moved to Chicago by myself. I didn't know anybody. It was the hardest thing I did. I hated the cold weather. That's why I left Ohio. And now I'm in the worst blizzard in Chicago, living by myself, working at a place called Under Things, which was like a lame Victoria's Secret, and trying to make ends meet, just escaping my own life that I had built and worked so hard in LA and I was so proud of.
The other thing that I think is amazing is that even though you were involved with Playboy and that was a chapter in your life, that wasn't it for you. You knew that there was another life really kind of waiting for you on the other side. Is that correct? That there was something, that there was more than like this is just here for a reason, but there's an entirely different life on the other side of this, and you've always kind of kept towards that vision.
I used it for what it was worth. It made me a lot of money. I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of great things I would not be able to do. I did a lot of great things for my family that I wouldn't have been able to do. But I knew it was not my identity. It was not who I was. It was not who I wanted to be, but it was an out. That's it. That's all I can explain it. Lauren Michelle Hill and I talked about this with Sean, that her and we always wanted to be moms. We always wanted to have kids. I even saved most of my money that I worked for to adopt a kid. I didn't know if I was ever going to get married in Los Angeles. And I saved that to adopt a child on my own because that's how important it was. And I was going to do that at 26, 27. I mean, the time was ticking for me to want to just love somebody, and be a mom. And, things worked out differently. And I had to kiss a couple frogs. I won't say a lot of them to find my prince, but I did. And, yes, so it was just an out. I used it as a stepping stone, and here I am. I'm in the garden now.
Okay, so we're gonna switch gears. We could spend a lot of time on that chapter because it's pretty fascinating and it's really interesting. I'm sure for a lot of people. Just on the podcast, it's the great thing about podcasts. There's just the different people that you get to meet and hear their stories. Tell me what you've learned from getting a chance to talk to and interview so many different types of people. And is there anything that I know you can't just narrow it down to one, but what has been an impactful um, message or lesson that you've learned through somebody else?
You know, um, I'm not going to pick one podcast because I can't. They're all so different and they're all so amazing and they all have such great stories. But what I will say about it is that everybody has a story and people want to tell it. And you have to give them the stage and you have to set it for them to feel safe and vulnerable. And most people will speak their truth. But throughout this life, I feel like everybody's so fake and everybody's trying to put on this image. And if you put on an image, then somebody else is going to have to put on an image. And it's just a domino effect. But if you can be real, then other people start to be real. And that's what I've gathered from this. And that's the biggest gift to me because I feel like I've been real for so long and I've started to now draw those people towards me. And I think that's why I didn't fit into Hollywood. I think that's why a lot of the stuff you hear on the news or with Hef and things like that, I was never a part of because I was always real. People know you can't mess with real. You know, when you're not trying and you're just who you are and you're authentic and you won't take stuff, people know better than to say, hey, you want to get on a private plane and go to an island? You want to do this? You want to do that? They know better.
There's a lot of posing going on out there for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so tell me about you've talked about this, throughout this podcast and just in your whole life. Really, really important to you, big picture. Everything you ever wanted to be was a mom, and so now you are, and you've been a mom now for almost 18 years.
Yeah.
How has that, being a mom, being a wife, how has that changed your perspective?
Well, it's given me purpose. And I know people find purpose in other ways, but I really love taking care of people. I like making people feel a certain way. And it's easy to make little kids feel great and comfortable and loved. As they get older, it's a little bit harder, as we both know. I just think the biggest gift is watching them grow. And it's the hardest gift because you have to let them go. You want to put into their hearts and their minds and in their little bodies that they're going to be great and they're going to do great things. And that's all you can hope for. But this has been a really hard pill to swallow because you know you have to let go. And they are such a big chapter of our lives, and we are just a chapter of their life. And that is really hard to wrap your brain around as a parent.
If you had one wish for our kids to think about or have a memory of their mom and about your life, what would that be?
I love traditions. Traditions create memories. I know I'm forcing the traditions now where they're becoming nightmares. So I
Like
know,
what? Name one nightmare tradition.
like just having them bake the Easter bread, or I don't know, sit around and watch Passion of the Christ on Easter. So you know what they are, and you're being funny now. But
Well, I do, but nobody else does, so we're sharing that.
I now come to the conclusion that I'm going to tell my kids to tell me their favorite things every holiday, and then we're going to make new memories. And so it's going to be more grown up stuff. Maybe I won't make them Easter egg hunt, things like that, because that's very selfish. And like I said, my memories are turning into nightmares because everybody's so angry at me. If my kids could understand one thing about me and my life, I made the best decision that I could at the time. It was the only decision. And I think that's the hardest thing about making decisions is making it. And in my life, every decision I made, whether they agree with it or they don't, at that moment in time, that is what I had to do. And it's not what I would have did at 40. It's not what I would have did at 50. It's not what I would have done if I had kids or if I was married. But at that time, it was the best thing I could have did for myself.
You mentioned, that you want to take action, that there's no tomorrow. And so I know you are very fond of your lists and your goals and everything you want to do. So we've got the book, we've got the movie. Our first son is going to be 18 years old. You're about to turn 50 years old.
No, I'm turning 49 first.
We're close. We're close. We're both getting there. We both in the next couple years. So, um, what else is out there? I know there's other things that you've talked about doing that you want to accomplish.
Well, you're not going to like this one, but I'd like to own an armadillo.
I didn't know that.
You learn something new. I've always wanted one. I think they're just super cool and great little creatures. Um, you say I like to pick expensive hobbies, and I really want to get my pilot license. I wanted to fly fighter jets growing up as a kid. Growing up, you couldn't print things out. You had to go physically to the mall or wherever it was. And I literally bought a poster and I put this jet on my wall and I wanted to fly jets and I wanted to be, a pilot. And I wanted to fly fighter jets and drop bombs and do all kinds of crazy
I
things.
think you just wanted to drop bombs more than anything.
Maybe. But I still want to accomplish. I started getting my pilot license when we met, and then I put it on the back burner because I got pregnant, and then all those small planes were crashing, so it didn't sound like a good idea. But I don't know. It's just something I really, really want to accomplish. It's something that I really want to do. Again, I was in a plane that had a emergency landing. It was very scary. I want to be the person on the flight that says, "Hold on, everybody. You're in good hands. I got this." No, I'm kidding. I just, I don't know if it's a control thing. I don't know if it's freedom. I don't know what it is, but just like I fight with the Playboy, like I hate it, but I know that it's helped me. I hate flying, but I also love everything about just the mechanics of an airplane. And I'm just so intrigued and fascinated and in love with the idea of being a pilot.
Is it that, or is there a piece of you that knowing that has been a bit of a fear of yours in life, just facing one more fear that you don't want to let hold you back?
Well, I face the fear every time I get on a flight. So, I mean, I hide it, but I just think that it's just, it's a checklist. It's like I have no regrets. I've done everything I've wanted to do in my life. Like, I don't want to die tomorrow, but if I did, it would be like, wow, I lived a good life. Like everybody says, I just did an interview, and one of the things his grandpa said was, live a life that, you're proud of and that's worth living and that, you'd be excited to watch. And so, when my kids hopefully tell stories about me, it's going to be like, well, she was so crazy. She got a pilot license and she never used it. She just did it to do it. So I don't know. I really don't know, but there is no tomorrow. And so I do have a checklist, and every day I'm trying to execute and I'm trying to maximize the 24 hours in the day that we have and just try to do my best and show up every way I can for everybody, including myself. And making promises to yourself is the most important thing, because if you can't keep the promises to yourself, you can't keep them to anybody else. And I learned that. And I'm trying to stay disciplined in that with my Bible studies on Thursday that I do by myself, my brain training on Monday that I do by myself, and the little things that you might not know of that I do that is just showing up for myself and making promises so that I could be good to everybody else.
All right, we're going to wrap up soon, but we're going to get a little deep. All right.
No, we're not. This
So,
is the rapid fire.
so if somebody was listening right now that feels stuck or broken and just in a bad place, what would you want them to hear?
Find the little girl or little boy inside. And those are the fighters. Those are the ones that aren't jaded. Those are the ones that aren't broken. Those are that's your spirit inside telling you to keep going. And, your life is a whole book, and you have to look at the messy parts as chapters, and you got to just flip the page. If you were in a forest, you wouldn't stand there and die and be like, raise a white flag and say, all right, it's done. I'm not going to look for water. I'm not going to look for food. I'm just going to sit here and cook in the sun and die or wait for a bear to get me. You're going to keep walking. You're going to keep moving. You're going to put it into action. And I think that's with life. Instead of worried about, oh gosh, this happened to me, or I can't believe that happened yesterday, you have to just put it into action and say, okay, this happened. How am I going to use it for my greater purpose in life? How am I going to use this? I'm not going to let it use me. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself.
What if everything that you have built, everything that you've done, disappeared tomorrow? What would be the most important thing? What really matters to you?
Well, I've been saying this as I get older, and a lot of people don't like it, but I'm protecting my peace as I get older. There's a lot of people I had to distance myself from. There's a lot of things I don't do, or things that I do. Um, my We're rich in so many ways, you and I, in our life and our blessings and all the things. My wealth is my peace, my family, and my health. And those are things that matter, not the car I drive, not, I mean, I like our house. And obviously we've been through some stuff with houses, but none of that matters. And we've had people that lost their houses in fires. They're just things. My riches are my family, including our extended family, my family, our family. It's my family. It's everything to me.
Does that include the tortoises?
They are the family. They're on the Christmas card.
Yeah.
And the armadillo.
And the armadillo, yeah. So, Unfiltered with Jen Archuleta, after everything you've been through, what does a living an unfiltered life actually mean to you?
Well, I think it's like showing up with one eyelash sticking on and off, and all the mics not working, and all the bad cameras, and my flower wall falling off, and dogs jumping on my lap and barking, and just crying and not caring and telling your story like it's going to help somebody, not because you have to prove something. And that's what it means to me. And that's the only thing I've tried to portray my whole life. I just didn't have a platform for a long time. And I was more angrier than back then. I was really angry. And now I'm like so loving that I just want to help people, and I want to do the right thing. And I want to pray on people when they don't even know it. Like I did at the beginning when I almost started crying. Like I said, when people are angry and mad and I'm at a store, instead of saying, oh, what a Karen or whatever, I say a prayer in my head for them. I'm like, God, whatever they're doing in their life or whatever's happening, just like I pray over them. And that's what Unfiltered is. It's authentically being you, but also being you in the dark room. And also the person that comes out of the dark room, when you're around the people, you're still that person.
Love that. Okay. Fun round.
Okay.
Keep it tight, keep it light. I bet you we're going to disagree on some of these things, so I won't make this about me, but I'm going to express some of my disagreement.
Well, how about you answer and then I can answer?
Nope, this is about you.
Okay.
Who apologizes first in our marriage?
I think we both stay pretty silent until one can't take it anymore.
Who apologizes first?
I don't know. I think I do.
No, you don't apologize. I end up apologizing.
Okay.
Who is more stubborn?
I would say you, but you give in.
This is such a silly question. We already know the answer to this. Who's a better driver?
I think you're a terrible driver.
Who's a better driver?
I am.
If we asked our kids who's a better driver, what would they say?
So I brake and I gas a lot because I learned how to drive in Los Angeles, and so it's traffic.
No. I didn't ask where you learned. If we asked our kids who was a better driver, what would they say?
I think they would say
They
me.
would say me. So
Okay.
I'll answer that. Okay.
We'd have to ask our kids.
Favorite family memory? One of your childhood and then one of our family.
I mean, my childhood favorite family memory is being on the lake with my dad and his family, and probably baking cookies with my mom and my brothers and my sister. And our favorite, I mean, I just think we do such amazing things. Costa Rica is a trip for some reason. I think our whole family holds dear to our heart for some reason. That was a really great time.
That was a fun trip.
I almost bought a house there.
I'm surprised you didn't. One place where you still want to travel to?
I don't know. I mean, probably the Maldives. I'd like to go to the Maldives. We've talked about that. I mean, I've been to Bali. I would love for our family to go to Bali. That's a very long flight. Thailand is amazing. I mean, there's so many amazing places. I can't say it where I'd want to go, because I'll go wherever. It's not where you are, it's who you're with. So if you guys want to take me to, you know, Kentucky, I'll go.
You
Nice
know what's funny?
the vacation. Yeah.
Right before when you said, if you guys want to take me to,
Mm-hmm.
you know what popped into my head?
What?
Kentucky. Right before you said that.
Oh, you should have said it out loud.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Probably, I mean, to all those people out in Kentucky, it's a wonderful place.
We must be on the same frequency here.
Maybe that's our vacation for the summer.
Maybe not. Coffee or wine?
Well, I gave up wine. I gave up drinking, so I'd have to say coffee, but I could only do one cup.
Early bird or night owl?
Well, I'm having a hard time sleeping now, so I would say both.
I would say you're a night owl.
I'm glad I'm making you laugh so much.
You are not an early bird.
No, I try.
Last question. One word other than blessed
Oh gosh, I was just going to say blessed.
to describe your life right now.
Unimaginable. Crazy.
I like that. Unimaginable. Well, babe, I feel like we did our original podcast together and we spoke for 2 hours on that. I feel like the only time we get extended time to talk to each other is a podcast. So I feel like maybe we should schedule this more often.
I think it's fun. Maybe the next the next season I will never air it. We'll just do podcasts and we'll keep them and our kids can watch them later.
You think people would be interested in that? Do you think they would?
No, I said we will just do podcasts and then we'll just put them in a little cute file and cabinet and our kids can look at it later when we're dead and gone. It's like, weren't mom and dad cute? They met for podcasts. We kept their lives so busy that they had to actually meet for podcasts.
Well, well, I love you, babe. I think your story, I know it was hard to get into all of it right now, but your story is incredible. I think the podcasts that you've done and your guests have been really a joy to listen to. I'm proud of you, and I just can't wait to see what's next. So I love you, and thank you for having me on your final episode.